having to try to knock a lot of this out today. We're probably not going to be able to. We'll probably need to meet again, and we'll need to decide that very quickly because we have a very short window in order
Right.
to get public comment and to be able to do the public hearing on at least what I'll call the tower amendments for the August public hearing. So, Mr. Weiner, yes?
Just say, I mean, don't take this the wrong way. Last 2.5 years that we did this, they gave us deadlines. We never met them either.
No, you have to meet this one.
So we
Yeah,
have to
we
meet
have
this
to,
one.
yeah, this is important.
I know.
This is different.
Yes.
This is different.
Why is this
State,
different?
state code changed last year that says that anything that's referred to by city council to the planning commission must be brought back to the city council within 100 days, or it's automatically recommended for approval by the planning commission. So you can choose not to.
Well, that's fine. I'm just curious. I mean, we always ask for an extension. They gave us an extension.
No,
No,
but
they,
Okay, that's
they
fine.
are very concerned about getting this done.
Understand?
I would like to be able to give them what you all want to do. Watch Bobby have this coronary, right here. By August. I mean, to say to them, hey, we want to do this and this and this and this and this.
What-
And we want to change this and that.
Yeah.
I would hope to be able to do that.
What is our deadline date?
April 17th, I want to say something like that.
No, our deadline
August,
date
I'm
has
sorry.
100 days to get it back to them.
I think it's August 17th.
August
No,
17th.
It's September, the actual 100 days from when it was sent.
Oh, I think I'm wrong, September 7th.
Yeah, it was September 18th, and there is a planning commission hearing the week prior
Okay.
So
to that.
So my question is, after we go through this, don't we have to have a public hearing?
we'll
So the
have a
public can
public
speak,
hearing.
and then we can either vote on it then or
Well, what we'll do, okay, Bobby, you can smack me if I've gotten this wrong. We're gonna meet here today. This is a workshop, no public comment. We may have to do it again, a public workshop, no comment. The third one, what we'd probably end up doing is doing public comment. And then it would come to the planning commission in August and you'd vote on it.
September.
Which
Then-
we're being hopeful for August so
We're
that
being
we
we're
have
gonna get
time.
it. Well, you know what, Bobby?
It's July
Yes.
already.
I know.
We're
It
gonna
is.
get, David,
Okay.
we can
Let's
get
do
this
it.
done.
Let's do it. We're
We
talking.
can get this done.
We're talking too much. Go.
You,
Talking too much.
So,
I need to scoot him closer to me.
Oh, you can smack me.
Yeah, Don's gotta go. All right,
Okay.
let's go.
There are three ordinances that have been referred to you. They're in your packet,
Hold on.
I think that you got today from Bobby.
It is. Kay, before we do that, we want to just kind of we want to frame it up
Background?
for you first, just so that we can make sure we're in the right spot, because there was a lot of discussion today, and I did add a couple slides to what you have because of some of the discussion we had today. So, again, there are two paths that we can take. There are the referral ordinance from Councilman Tower, that was sponsored by Councilman Tower, that deals directly with the Old Beach overlay and overall changes that deal with required findings and the grandfathered properties as well as enforcement. I'll have Ms. Wilson go over that for the commission. And also, the city council directed staff to bring to the commission opening up the door to do the rest of the revisions. So I would say we potentially could, as we try to hammer some of this out, get some of the tighter details on how we prefer it to operate as you've had your discussions. So dealing with 241.2, the actual requirements of short-term rentals. If we can hammer those out, we could deal with some of these other issues as far as an overlay district and other things that we'll probably have to have a much longer discussion on as far as where we would prefer to have potentially by right operations of short-term rentals and say you can't do it anywhere else in the city. So that's kind of a real high-level summary. So Kevin quickly pointed out to me as a reminder that, and this is one that Mark Stiles has said a lot of, there's already 2,594 short-term rentals that are currently sharing on a platform. This is as of March, okay? Probably 2,300 of them, well, probably 2,000 of them are in some form grandfathered or legal. So there are a lot of short-term rentals that are already out there, and that is that additional map that I gave you, which is this one. This is a printout from what the Commissioner of Revenue gave us in March. We actually now have access to this data now. We procured a contract And we now have a lot of the data that answers some of the questions that you have been posing. How many are operating that we may not know about? We've only been able to give you the ones that were the 311 list before. So
Do we not have that slide?
No,
you
it's
have the
in the-
slide. I added that bullet
Oh, you
at the
added-
top.
okay,
I added the bullet at the top.
Gotcha,
So,
okay, I see what you're saying, okay, I got it now.
yeah, so registered properties, so that's what's colloquially termed as the 311 list. That's where people have registered and they are not with a listing company. There's 739 properties on that. The applications that we actually have in our office for people that are claiming their grandfather, there's almost 300 of them. And we're trying to get through those. We're chipping away at that slowly because we've had so many conditional use permits. And then also, we have almost 200 conditional use permits that have been in the door.
I hate to keep interrupting, but so you have 290 applicants in your office now that they're claiming to be grandfathered and you're checking them out now? Is that what you meant by that?
Yes,
Okay.
because
a
of the
lot.
influx of short-term rental conditional use permit applications, we could not do those
Yeah.
and try to check these out because,
So are they operating? Is 290?
so I will tell
Yes.
you that those that have submitted their applications claiming they're grandfathered, if they have provided, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, what is the staff has been telling them?
The basic check is to make sure that they have been paying the taxes with the Commissioner of Revenue prior to the date. If that is the case, yes, we allow them to operate, barring any incidents that come up that we know about. Again, a deeper check right now, a good portion of them are sitting in a pile until we get the time and man-hours to review.
So the key check to that is, did you register before the deadline? Okay, so then you have some semblance of grandfathering. But remember, when the ordinance was passed, it says you have to meet all the requirements, which we need to then follow up on. So yes, we understand we are behind on that one because we just haven't had the ability to do it. But there is an initial check.
And the deadline was July 1, 2018.
That was my next question. It was July 1.
Was it July? I think it was July 1, 2018. Yes. Summer tells me I'm correct.
Because the ordinance was passed in November, wasn't it?
And then it came into effect
November?
November,
November.
November 1st,
I had a problem with that.
2018.
Okay.
No, 2019, I'm sorry.
So,
No, it would have been 2018.
yes, it was 2018, because 2019 was last year. So it was adopted January 2019, had to be
And then it came into
grandfathered.
effect in
Yeah.
November 2019.
That's right, because
18
it
months
took
later?
them. Yes,
9
because
months
it was
later.
after the election. It took them a long time to council to agree.
Oh,
The date you had to have paid
was
your
December
taxes and
1st.
stuff was before they passed the ordinance,
Right.
okay? So that's an 18 date, and the other two are 19s, and here we are in 20.
20? Seems a lot longer.
doesn't it?
Seems like it's been years.
So please reference the map. I just put this on here just as a placeholder. I gave everyone a hard copy of this map from March from the Commissioner of Revenue. From their vetting of the properties from Host Compliance, which is our third-party vendor. You can see the percentages that are broken down of who has the ability, or kind of where these are located.
The green is just a blob now, right?
Yes.
It's not a dot.
So it's just a lot of dots over top of each other. So I mean, there is something to be said to how many we've already let out of the barn, right? So, and then we're the conditional use permit closed it, and now we're trying to potentially tighten that up even more.
Do you mind defining orange contractor researching?
So the way the contractor works is that they actually go through an audit process of verifying the address. And so they note it here, and that can take between 2 to 3 months of verifying, okay, that is the address. So they're checking it.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
That's okay. All right. So, as we talked it through, and we started mapping the conditional use permit applications, 68% of the conditional use permit applications are located in these locations. They're located in the Old Beach Overlay District, North End Overlay District, Shore Drive Overlay, the Oceanfront Resort District, of course, and also putting out there the R5S, the district that is specific for shadow lawn that says that you cannot, it was created to protect the neighborhood, so you can't split up your lots.
Can you or Kate give us a definition of an overlay district, or what an overlay is, and what topics can be covered in an overlay?
What you have to do to have an overlay is the underlying zoning still applies. You're still R5S, or you're still R10 or whatever. You overlay on that zoning in a specific area what really ever you want to do. Ours are mostly done to protect neighborhoods. That's why we did them. The shore, the Shore Drive overlay was done to protect the Shore Drive area from multi-story, multi-family buildings. Now, it says in the Shore Drive overlay that in order to have a multi-family building, you have to be zoned B4. It can only be in the B4, and you need a CUP.
So,
Wow.
So that's the reason for that one. The north end, I'm not sure I can tell you what that was. Yes, I can. It was design standards and that kind of thing. Old Beach was done to protect the Old Beach characteristics of that neighborhood. That allowed you to put the two houses on one lot. The ORD was done because it's form-based code. It didn't have any other thing than that. And R5S is a district, it's not an overlay.
so typically overlays are utilized, as Kay said, to enhance or to protect the character of a neighborhood. So, again, as noted, Old Beach and North End, there are design standards, so essentially gave incentives to have additional units so long as you had a higher design standard that was met, that kind of complemented what was existing there. So typically overlay districts are used in that fashion to protect a neighborhood.
One overlay we could be looking at is limiting the number of rentals that could be in a given.
We could do a short-term rental overlay, and there is support on that. For that, we are working on one. We will get to the end and we'll start to discuss that, okay? I also would say that we create overlays because zoning ordinances need to be the same everywhere. If you have a zoning ordinance that's R10 and you say R10 has to do these things, well, everywhere there's R10, you have to do it. You can't split it up unless you use an overlay. And it also allows you to gather a lot of different zoning districts in the overlay, and that allows you to govern them the same way.
Can we just say we're gonna do an overlay, an Old Beach overlay, and no more short-term rentals?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
can say whatever
okay.
you want.
Just wait, we're getting to Old Beach. Just
Okay.
wait, just wait.
I mean,
So-
I'm just saying it's overcrowded now with them, you know, just a
You can
thought.
be
Right.
on, you
You
can
would-
be on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, you can just about do anything as long as we can justify it.
Right. The key with overlays is that there is a identified reason to have higher or different regulations than elsewhere. And so, yes, you could use it in that fashion, or like we have used it for a number of years.
In other words,
Bobby, can I just interject? Are we live?
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So and I know I'm not diversing, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not addressing Sandbridge. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure because we got several letters regarding Sandbridge and their short-term rentals. And I want to just sort of make sure that.
Well,
They
and
still
I should
follow the
just
ordinance.
mention.
Okay, well, I just want to sort of
Okay, it's not,
clarify that for us though.
okay, it will affect Sandbridge if we make changes to the conditions.
Okay, to the.
Because they have to meet the conditions even in
Okay.
Sandbridge. So I don't want them to think, oh, yeah, we don't have to do that. No, if we make
Okay,
changes
Well, then
to
that helps us.
241.2, then they would have to. But they're their own little thing. I kind of think of them as an overlay,
Okay.
a state legislative overlay, but an overlay.
So the point of using these existing overlay districts is to just note where the concentration of the applications we're getting, okay? Not to go down the path of actually creating an overlay district yet. I just wanted to show you the concentration. of where we're getting these applications. Not saying there's plenty of them elsewhere, but this is our typical area that where a lot of our tourists and other people come to the city. So I'll hand it over to Kay. So there's 3 slides here that deal with and I'll have Mr. Kemp interject in here as well, but there are 3 slides that deal specifically with each of the general ordinance revisions, and then 1 slide that deals with the Old Beach Overlay District. You have a copy of the draft ordinances that were referred to you, so if you'd like to follow along on each one of them, that would be good. So, Kay, first one is the required findings.
Well, that's not the first one on your stapled. We gotta get better at that. That's the second one on your, stapled, things. And what I wanna first go over is what we did was, if you are grandfathered and you fit into that category, you still have to meet the conditions, and if you leave the short-term rental vacant, don't use it as a short-term rental for 2 years or more, you lose your grandfathering. So what we don't want to see happen is 20 years from now, somebody say, oh, I have one, we'll never be able to figure out where it is or what it is or any of that. And we didn't want them to be vacant in these neighborhoods where there's a lot of things. So we made this revocation by the planning director, which we may have to change to city council, but, you know, we're trying to get by with the planning director. Mr. Wall.
And, you know, initial thoughts would be, that would be difficult to enforce. But I don't think that would be the case, because they're not paying their transient occupancy
They're not
tax.
paying any transient, because they didn't have any transient occupancy. This may come to a point, I'm not sure it's going to get rid of as many grandfatherings as we think it will. I think it's just one of those things that if we can get a rash of these being vacant, we can go ahead and revoke them. Then I'm gonna do, no, I'm going back. Let me do the, general, civil penalties. There you go. Yes, civil penalties. There are 2 kinds of violations. There's a criminal penalty, which is a misdemeanor, and a civil penalty in zoning. We don't particularly use civil penalties. We have a few things we use it for. Signs is one of them. And there is a criminal penalty. We use criminal penalties because most people do not want to have a criminal conviction on their record. So they are more likely to come into compliance if there is a civil penalty. I mean, a criminal penalty, okay? Criminal penalties run from a fine to fine and jail. Get up to a year in jail and a $2,500 fine for a criminal penalty. A civil penalty is going to be a much lower thing. You cannot go to jail for a civil penalty. You also cannot go to jail for a zoning violation of any kind. So even though they are misdemeanors and they might be first-class misdemeanors, you're still not going to jail for them. You're gonna get the $2,500, but you're not going to jail.
What's the criminal penalty for a short-term rental?
Well, it would depend. It would be up to, tell me, $2,000? Up to $2,000.
What type of,
It's criminal right now.
for anything, like?
For any
leaving trash cans
violations
out?
of
Leaving trash cans out?
241 pound 2, you got it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Normally we don't take exactly what the violation was and parcel it out. Okay, we're gonna give $50 for, no, we don't usually do that,
Okay.
for this one, that one. So 241.2 is the, any violation of that, or if you don't get a CUP. That would also be a civil penalty. It's a $200 fine for initial summons, $500 for each additional. If you get to roughly 5 of these, you can then change the penalty from criminal to civil. No, from civil to criminal. So if you get too much of the monetary payment, we can change it to a civil. You can't do both at the same time. You can only do one or the other, okay? There was a lot of interest for this because we felt like a lot of this would fit well with just getting a fine. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not time-consuming for the inspector. It is not a ticket, like you get a traffic ticket. It is a little more complex than that. You would get a civil penalty. You would then get a form that says civil penalty, and it tells you what you have to pay. If you pay it, you admit your guilt. But then if you keep doing it, we have to go out and cite you again. If you decide that you're going to go to court and contest it, that's fine. You can take it to court, and what you could get up to your $200 penalty. But it is a civil action, which means I don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. I just have to prove a preponderance of the evidence.
On a criminal action, if they don't pay,
No.
okay, well, if they don't, does it attach to the property?
Yes, it would be as a lien.
What happens if I'm making so much money that I'll just pay the penalty?
That's fine. After 5 of those, there's a dollar amount, but after roughly 5 of those, we would then bring you back as a Class 1 misdemeanor and try to get you put in jail.
Oh, yeah.
Get mean,
Get your attention.
get mean.
Do I actually think any circuit court judge over at the courthouse here would actually put you in jail for that? I have put 3 people in jail for zoning violations.
Yeah, and how many years?
20. Been here 20 years, and I've put 3 people in jail, one on multiple occasions.
Same person.
Yeah, that probably, if we had to count each one of that one, that's about 6 all on its own.
So.
We were up to like months.
Right.
Mr. Wall,
My question is, in that, we understand if they're operating, STR without approval, but, the violation is if they're not complying with the conditions that are, for short-term rentals, which would be, parking, too many people, even though sometimes they don't have control over that, but they're still responsible.
responsible.
And, okay, so I just want to make sure that that's understood in my mind, that it's for these conditions. They're amplified music after 10 PM, people
It's
after
their
11,
problem.
and it's, yeah.
Now, we can also take them to, back to city council and ask that their CUP be revoked, or their grandfathering, whatever they might have. And I think before we ever got to the point where they just keep paying it, we would take them back and try to have him revoked. We have done that one time in 20 years.
So
Okay,
well,
third one.
Just to clarify on that as well, Kay, all short-term rentals that operate in the city would have to meet this requirement. So if you're operating a short-term rental and you don't have a conditional use permit or a grandfather status, we would, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kay, we would still be able to issue a civil penalty for operating without meeting the requirements. So it also goes for those that are just trying to operate under the radar as well. So, which is what we want to get at.
Which is what would, yeah.
That's where we're at, yeah.
So, may I?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Just curious, I got a couple questions. So how, with the 30 minutes on the use permit that's always a condition, who gets that call?
Okay, what should happen is that you're the neighbor and you're irritated. So you call 311. 311 should have the list that lists who should be contacted. They should contact that person, and they should contact the people at the STR within 30 minutes.
So the planning department supplies that to,
Well,
Information.
actually, a lot of those are supplied by the Commissioner of the Revenue, because when he registers those, he asks for someone who can be contacted if there are
then who
violations.
writes that citation or ticket? The police or zoning?
No, there won't be a citation or
Okay,
ticket.
who writes the summons.
Okay, if somebody, well, zoning, it's a zoning violation. Now, they're not gonna go out with the owner or the responsible party. The responsible party's gonna go out and hopefully nothing, it all goes away. If it doesn't go away and they keep getting calls at 311, the next call will be to the police department.
So then, from the police department, how does it get to the planning department so that they know that there's a infraction or
Violation.
whatever you want to call
When
it?
it goes to 311, they will text or email Mr. Kemp to tell him, we had a complaint on
Is
this.
that your personal cell phone?
He's not coming up either.
No, ma'am, we have a general email for STRs, and the hope is that these will get sent there where we can then input and create a record and a complaint in our database, so then we are able to track those. So when you start thinking, how many strikes a certain property has, whether or not we want to take it back to revoke the use permit, we have all that in our system.
So
Every time they get a violation, zoning is not going to write a civil penalty. They don't now. You give people a time to get it all together, and you say in the next 10 days, there better not be anything else.
So the 30-minute, who monitors that?
So it's my understanding that, and again, this gets handled, and this is where the breakdown is. When it comes to violations, it is reported by those that are impacted by the violation. 311, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, 311 tells them if nothing changes in 30 minutes, call 311 back and we will then, we will dispatch a police officer. So it's kind of, the clock starts and we tell, and again, we're trying to close the gap on this process. It's just, it's not an easy gap to close at this point, but that's what, my understanding is what the 311 staff is relaying to the person, so.
And that is Bobby and I's understanding. Apparently, there have been a lot of things going through that have not been reported, things of that nature. So we're not getting,
So we're not getting an accurate number of complaints through 311?
we are not.
Okay.
But we are working on that.
Correct.
Apparently, there was some new supervisory
Okay.
people, and so we're doing that.
Right.
Okay, any other questions?
And
Thank
IT is also working on including their, 311 is updating their system, their customer service system. And so this is one of the portions when I talked to the director of ECCS that they will add in so that it when they log this in, it'll get routed to us immediately for us to log. So again, we're not there yet, so we need to do something in the interim to close the gap, so.
So if they get a report of the 200 people, I don't know whether you were listening to council last night, there were 200 people partying.
Wow.
That's something that zoning the next morning is going to look at. They're gonna go out, they're gonna see what they can see, they're gonna talk to the police department, they're gonna investigate that. But if you get a report of trash can overturned, I don't think you're gonna get a civil penalty for that. It depends on what it is as to whether or not you will get a civil penalty for it. George, anything else?
No, you answered.
Thank you. Jack?
So they could get a warning.
Yes.
And then get the civil penalty. Or if it's like just a blatant 200 people, then
Yeah.
they could just go straight to,
That's true. It's kind of a discretion. I do need to remind you, and council hates for me to remind them this, that this is a zoning violation. A zoning violation requires that you give them a notice of violation, and then they have 10 days to correct the violation. So that's why I said you had 10 days that this better not happen again. You can, when you get the notice of violation, you can then appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we can't stop you from renting out during that period.
I remember exactly why, when the 30-minute deal, when we put on there, physical response to the site is not required, and just because of the fact that if they're having a party with 100 people, I don't want to go to that site and try and break it up.
Well, that, and the other thing was you could even be in the city of Virginia Beach and not be able to
Get
get
there in
there.
30
Right,
minutes.
exactly, exactly. So I mean,
Yeah, there was
that's
a
what they were,
couple of-
we were talking about it last night, why did we put physical in there? Why isn't, and that's the reason why. But there's more to it than just that, but, I don't know, it's strange.
Okay, the other portion of these CZO changes would be, we would require city council to make findings. They would have to make a finding that the density of short-term rental uses in the immediate vicinity just does not change the characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. So these are some of the concerns that we've been hearing. We want to make sure that council is looking at these and can either approve or disapprove them by these findings. We have to find that parking is readily available. On-site parking solutions are visually appealing and environmentally responsible, so they don't pave over the entire front yard.
Yeah, that's crazy.
If an off-site parking plan is submitted, the parking has to be reasonable and practical so as to be easily used by the guests. So if you get a garage, a city garage, and it's a mile from the STR, no, nobody's using that.
Isn't there a distance now?
Yes, it's a quarter of a mile?
Yes, we have typically been using a quarter mile as the benchmark.
Okay, and then we again get another density issue. The increased occupancy of short-term rental use is compatible with the character of the neighborhood, noise, trash, and other negative consequences. And we would also, I think, put in here that, well, not, maybe in the next one, the short-term rentals are a needed resource in certain areas of the city, and it is located in close proximity to venues, districts, or areas that generate a high volume of people or visitors, like the oceanfront,
Yep.
like the water. I mean, even up the bay, like the water. We might want to extend that to the convention center and the sportsplex,
Amphitheater.
but we need to
which
talk
are-
about that. The amphitheater, maybe if we ever get anything on the dome site, that kind of thing.
Right. And
Going back to the increased occupancy of short-term rental, is that where you only 2 per week? Is that what you're, that the thought, that or?
No, I think it's that, it goes more, a little more to density, but I'm gonna let Bobby, if I'm wrong. That the increased occupancy is just that there are more people there
Okay.
than there would normally have been.
these end up being more general for your discretion and your discussion. These are based off of your discussions that you've had. And you probably talked about many of these actually today, when you did it. Now, this spells out that these need to be, one, the applicant has to prove that they can meet these requirements, and two, these are ways to either approve or to deny if you feel like it doesn't meet these criteria. This makes it a little bit clearer for you to look at and say, you know what, I just don't think this is the right area, I think there's too many of them here. Boom.
Okay.
I think it's close enough to a venue that this is warranted, and I think they can reasonably meet the other requirements, right? And so it gives you an opportunity to, as you should, have some discretion as the planning commission when you make your recommendation. But at the same time, it gives you your basis for what they're looking for, right? It takes the onus off of us to say they check all the boxes, to the applicant proving why we should approve you, what makes you different, right? Because the only thing we've been able to do is say, they check all the boxes because that's all I got, that's all I
Because
have.
they make parking.
Right, right.
That's right.
They have 2 parking spots, 2 bedrooms.
Okay, so that is, the first 2 of those ordinances, that's what they contain. The third ordinance is about the Old Beach overlay. If you go to the first map, it's the area here in pink. That's Old Beach.
Oh, Shore Drive.
No, that.
Orange.
Oh,
Oh, no, pink,
no,
right here.
hot pink.
Hot pink.
Hot pink, sorry. See, I think that is purple when I look up there.
It does look purple up there.
Okay, so that is Old Beach. And if you go to the third map, 1, 2, that is a close-up of Old Beach. Goes roughly from 27th to 23rd along Arctic and further west. Okay? This area, and we would add this to the Old Beach overlay, allows by right short-term rentals that meet the following criteria. they meet all the requirements of 241.2, which is the conditions, and that the STR is the principal residence of the owner and it's owned by the operator. So if I want to run an STR, it can only be in my home. I don't have to be there, but it has to be my principal residence, which means you can only have one.
You can't build a house for an STR either.
No,
Correct, I like that.
So that goes back to they dwell in that house 6 months and a day?
yes.
Okay.
It has to be your principal residence, which means you're there 6 months at a
Want to
day,
make sure,
majority of the time.
right.
And this, it's just for the Old Beach, this isn't for,
This is just Old Beach at this time.
I like that.
This is to help facilitate future discussion, but this is what's in front of us now. We may want to vet this out and hash it out, and then potentially bleed this over to the further discussion.
got it, okay.
Okay, what it does is it makes you, it makes it be your home. Okay, and that means you could only have one, and you cannot ask for a CUP. You either meet this or you don't get one.
That way you don't have to worry about coming in front of us.
It will not be allowed by CUP.
Okay, you gotta meet their other criteria
Yes,
and be principal residents.
right.
And-
If you looked at look at the vicinity map, if we have one next month for the Old Beach, how many are there? It's amazing.
It's horrible.
It's really amazing. It's a lot of them. So,
Do we have a number
What?
for that? Kevin, do you have a number for that? Just out of curiosity, like a number of how many residents are in Old Beach and how many are actually,
The residence one is hard for us to get, because I did try to get that number, but I can probably pull up a map if you bear with me
that's
for.
just curious,
it
yeah.
would also not let a renter do this because it has to be owned by the operator.
Just bear with
I
me.
see
You would not let a,
something-
say that again?
If I rent,
Oh, if you rent the house, it has,
You can't
got
do
it.
it.
You can't sublease it.
sublease it to
Sublease
STRs.
it.
Even if your owner says, yeah, I'm okay with that, I don't care.
So is this like home sharing?
No, home sharing, you have to be there.
Okay, this is just,
This is, I want to go to France for a month, and so I'm going to short-term rental for, every 3 days, up to my max number, of course, and I'm going to do my house that way while I'm in France.
It's sort of how Airbnb started.
Well, why wouldn't we want to extend that to other neighborhoods that are getting overcrowded with short-term rentals?
I think we're
You
getting-
may.
We're getting there, I think we're getting there.
I mean, you may want to make this other places. They have to just ask for your this is for Old Beach. Mr. Tower wanted to do this for Old Beach because it is getting inundated. Honestly, it is.
It's either this or say no more short-term rentals.
Look at Old Beach.
I mean, there's Old Beach. Yeah, Old Beach has a lot of them.
And it's just it's a small place.
It's only 5 blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you throw in the commercial use in it. It's not good. They're having a terrible time down there right now.
How do you enforce it if we don't know it's happening, if it's by right?
You'd still have to register with zoning.
So you'd have to register, but you wouldn't have to get a permit.
You would have to register because it says so in 241.2.
Got it, okay.
We're gonna clear that up too. It says register. We're gonna make sure it says register, the commissioner register, and with zoning.
But wait a minute, but that would not prevent someone who has a place that they want to rent out, and they're not gonna live there. It's a vacation home that they use,
Then it's not their principal residence.
I understand, but can they now then come in for a conditional use permit?
No.
No?
So as it's drafted now, it does not have the out of the conditional use permit in the proposal that was referred by city council. That is something for consideration, and it makes, because, in my opinion, Because you allow it a certain way, that means the bar for approval for a conditional use permit goes way to the top. Because you just tell people operate this way because we say it's okay. So it makes it easier for us just to say no to analyze it and say, we recommend denial, because you've got to prove to us what is your unique circumstance, why can't you meet the other requirement? And it's not just because I own multiple properties and I wanna make more money, right? And so that's not a valid excuse anymore.
But all properties that are currently registered and operating would be grandfathered.
No.
No?
No. Grandfathered is a special term that's only used when city council or a board of supervisors takes a group of people and says, you can operate. You weren't operating legally, but we're going to let you operate by these rules. That's grandfathering. Now, are they non-conforming? We're still having discussion on whether they're.
Mike, are you talking about the ones that have already been approved?
Yes. They still have to meet the 241.2.
But not anything new coming up, though?
No, actually, I was not talking.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about someone that's had a house at the ocean front and their family, and they, not even that, they have a house at the ocean front. They've owned it for 5 years. They come down there, 8 times a year. Let family people use it, but then they say, I think we're gonna, rent it out to them too, short-term rentals, in addition to our own personal use of it. But we're not gonna live there, 6 months, and that's not our principal residence. They've been doing that, okay, so I guess that person would not be registered. Then there's another category of people that are registered, maybe registered and are using it. Oh, never mind, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at, I always look at Ms. Oliver's family, that they would leave for a few months and rent it out.
Yeah.
But all the other time, they lived at it. That was home. That would be their principal residence, and it was owned by the operator.
Right, because in the summer, we would move to the motel, we would live at the motel, run it, and then rent our house at the north end on a weekly basis, and then when school started and Labor Day, and that was it, and we'd move back in.
Okay, these are not, the old beach, and I may be wrong, and somebody who's lived here forever, tell me that. But I've only been here 40 years, I think.
Question. So what is it, 192 in the Pike still come down?
Yes,
Are any of those, now suppose there's 5 of them in Old Beach.
okay.
So what happens to those that are already, it's already in, the application's already in?
Okay. When you pass an ordinance at city council, it becomes effective immediately. Okay, and it applies to everything, whether you're in a pipeline or not. So if you are in the pipeline and you get through city council before these become effective in the Old Beach, you're fine.
It's almost
If you don't, you cannot, and you don't meet these requirements, you'll have to start over. In contrast to, if you meet these requirements, you can then get out of the queue.
the summer's half over.
Yes,
Why don't we just stop with short-term rentals right now, get the ordinance fixed, and then pick it back up?
because there is no provision in state code for moratoriums.
So we have to do it this way.
Damn laws.
So we have to, they're black books,
Yeah, I
so,
know,
Mr. Costin,
So you're saying if, whether I'm in the pipeline or already approved, when this ordinance comes out, I may lose my.
no, you're not gonna lose what you have. You'll be non-conforming.
Okay.
Now,
Do you all agree with
but
me?
it's 100 days before we ever get.
So the only and I know Mr. Alcaraz has a point to make also, so, so if you've been approved, so to Mr. Inman's point, if you registered and are grandfathered, right, that means you're before July 2018, okay, you can continue to operate as long as you don't, and with these changes, don't cease for more than 2 years, okay? If you get a conditional use permit, you will be bound by your rules in the conditional use permit that was approved. However, those get reviewed every 5 years, and if the rules change, I'm willing to bring them back to city council to say, council, you can decide whether they are okay to be granted again, because we've changed the rules. So really, the clock on the conditional use permits is 5 years. And so that's where that lies. But that was already there anyway. So that's not something that should take anyone by surprise on that.
And the 5 years gives you enough time if you had to make changes or something, that you've probably gotten the lifetime of those changes out of the property. So we will probably bring all of those back to look and see about changing them. But a lot of the changes that we need to do to the conditions are not substantive. They are explanatory. So we have all these conditions. Most of those are not going to change the condition. It's going to change how we look at them. So I'm not too concerned about conditions changing.
Indeed.
Maybe, depending.
That's only my opinion, you know.
Mr. Alcaraz, I know you.
Yeah,
lawyer.
I just,
George.
going back to the 311, I just had another question. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm
George,
new to
that's
this,
all
so
right.
I'm like,
That's
I'm
George,
gonna
if you
call
call
for
that number and nobody's answered, that's a problem.
Are you on hold? Are you on hold?
yeah, with music. So those that aren't grandfathered, those that aren't registered, those that aren't processing for the CUP, what happens to those that get calls that are having a party and they're actually doing it illegally? How do you, or how does 311 determine that they need to be called or notified to zoning if it's just a house that happened to have a party?
They would probably just call 911. I had trouble remembering that. Dial 911 and get the police to go, because they have a list. And if the address isn't on their STR list, they're not going to think it's an STR.
So
They're gonna
those are
call
the ones
police.
that are doing illegally, that's what I'm saying. How do we,
Well, what would happen, they would call the police department. The police department would go out, they'd find that these people are renting the place, and they'd ask for how long, and then it would notify
oh,
zoning.
so they do a little
They
investigation?
do, yeah, they can do a little bit of investigating. They've driven all the way to Sandbridge. Or wherever. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to blame Sandbridge for that.
All right,
Yeah.
no more 311 calls.
No, but we do need to close the gap on that, because I think
I think there is some gap.
there are some gaps, and it needs to be closed.
So if there is a rental and it's going crazy, and they call 311, and 311 says, I'm sorry, I don't have 112 72nd Street listed, you need to call 911? Is that what 311 says?
No, 311 would call 911.
Oh, so they would call it?
They would
For
call
them? Okay.
They ought
Is
to
that
call,
better?
and they better call.
So we will,
I was
we
just
will,
trying to figure.
Just don't call 811, that's misutility.
we need to, again, like you said, we need to close that gap, because the key is that, with what our officers are dealing with at this moment, I am unsure if, someone being allowed at a short-term rental is high on their priority list, while these should be definitely getting to us for us to at least investigate the next day so that we can take care of them. So we need to close the gap. I was called to the carpet yesterday for that, so I need to make sure that I close that gap and have a better explanation of how to handle that. So that's on me. I will bring that back to the commission, because there are plenty of questions on that.
So those are the three ordinances that have been referred to you, excuse me, that have been referred to you. They are the only thing that we have to get back, but council wanted you to look at all of it, and you have a right to look at all of it if they refer
We
this
just
to
go through all
you.
the slides?
That's the old beach slides. We didn't get to the big discussion yet. What I'd like to do, my preference is to
You direct.
deal with the old beach ordinance, right? Because we have a response that we have to provide for that, and put it here. And then if you want to use that discussion that we have for the old beach ordinance to drive the rest of the discussion, then we can do that. But I'd like to make sure that we come to an agreement on how we feel about this, and it can have a long discussion.
Okay.
Well, can I start on something?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I don't know how many of you here are living near or close proximity to one of these STRs, but I mean, I'm in the hot spot. It's not COVID-19, but I'm in the hot spot. I'm right in the center. I'm on Mediterranean Avenue, and I'm dealing with it. And I just want y'all to hear from me as a resident and also the planning commissioner, because I'm also approving, I've supported a lot of these because they met the code. But I just want to give you what I'm dealing with and examples of what I'm dealing with, so you know what a resident's dealing with and hear from me. I've got one behind me. They're not registered. And stupid stuff, like kicking a ball against the fence and making loud noises. Of course, it's a kid. And I call the host and they say, "Oh, it's a kid, they play." Okay, that's fine. But then I got to do it again 2 days later with another family and do the same thing. I got beer bottle caps thrown over my fence. I got cigarettes flicked over the fence. I clean up. I call the host. They do what they can. They put signs on the door inside. But these people are coming to have fun. They're not following the rules. I also, one of the other instances, we had a can put on the fence, and they shot BBs at it, and it fell in my yard. But I'm just saying, twice a week, I got to deal with this. And I understand, with the kids and all, but what I'm getting at is I have to, bring in the pony. I got to tame the pony twice a week. And that's what all the residents are dealing with right now. The trash is a major problem. You got two different families, if they're getting the maximum per week, you got two families with one trash pickup a week. And there was one, I think it was last night, on 14th Street, where the trash was overloaded. And that's because they had two rentals, two short terms.
Hey, George, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You've lived in this area for a while now, right?
I've been back and forth. I just moved out of Croatan to Mediterranean in March, and I've been dealing with this since March.
But you've been around that area. Has it been like that before Airbnb came along?
Not these short terms. There's rentals, but I haven't seen this
I mean,
turnover.
the trash and the problems like you're going through now? I'm just curious because,
No, because when you have a neighbor, you talk to them and it's over. It doesn't usually happen again.
right.
My concern is twice a week it happens.
Sure.
And that's I don't know how to curb that. I don't know how to.
So it affects your quality of life?
Yes.
Quiet enjoyment?
Yes.
Have you filed a complaint with the zoning board?
I have called.
Did you call 311? George, I'm sorry.
I called Will, the enforcer, and we talked, and I haven't taken any further than that. I'm trying to work it out, but I know they're illegal.
No, it's
But
for you.
I'm just telling you, it interrupts our lifestyle, and what I don't like, and it needs to be put out there, is twice a week I need to address this. And it's summer, of course, they're telling me, wait till September and we're gonna do a 2-year rental. Well, I gotta do this twice a week till September. It's just, and they're trying to help, but they're not there. These people are partying, they're gonna have fun, and they're not there to,
And they have a conditional use permit?
they don't.
Well, that's easy to take care of.
I know. It's a shame, because it's a neighbor that I know personally.
And that puts you in a bad spot.
Yes, it's a very bad spot, so I'm trying to work it out with them.
I
But
understand.
it's not working. It's not the host, it's not the owner. It's the guests that are coming in. And I'm gonna say this, they don't care. They're here to have fun, just like the one on Lake Station. They're there to have fun.
What kind of vetting, since you know a person?
She pushed me to the host, and that's who I'm dealing with right now.
And that's why we have hotels.
It's gone commercial, it has. And that's why I'm walking the fine line, because, like I said, I've supported most of these. And I've been living here since March, and I've been dealing with it, but they meet the 4.1 ordinance, and unless I hear major opposition, I usually vote for it. But I'm just letting you know what's going on, someone right there in it. I see it, I've talked to Guy Tower about it, and it is an inconvenience, it is, and it's getting crazier, so.
Well, going back to what Mr. Tom was talking about, what he's doing here with the old beach overlay, I think this is great. I mean, this is gonna put a big stop to everything, to what's in here. I mean, it's either this or just say no more short-term rentals.
Or an old beach.
Yeah, no more.
It's the inconvenience of calling and complaining. I'm not one to do that,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, I don't like doing that, and I don't want to keep doing it either.
It's gotta be extremely frustrating.
It is.
And George, you think, you're a man, and so then you put an older female who's living by herself, who's been in the house for 45 years in Old Beach, because a lot of these families, that's what they are. I mean, Old Beach was here it's been here for a very long time. How is she supposed to deal with it? And so she just has to put up with it. It puts people, our
Yeah.
residents, in a bad compromising position.
Is your area considered shadow lawn, or is that south of Norfolk Avenue?
I guess I'm Beachboro. I'm 12th and 12th and Mediterranean.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, we can't, so we have to watch what we do in the shadow lawn area,
That's a
right?
different district.
Right, but what is, that's what I'm saying, if his area isn't, so that's south of 21st Street, his area.
I'm where we
He's
just
south
had
of Old
two
Beach.
today. We
He's
just
on,
had
you're on
two.
12th Street, right?
12th
That's
and
Yeah.
our,
So where, I guess, where do we draw the line
that's
on
an
overlays
R5S.
on that particular area? So if we could do something like that, south of 21st Street, for where Old Beach is, to Norfolk Avenue. So I know on the other side of Norfolk Avenue, is shadow lawn. So you know what I'm getting at, where's the
That's-
border?
So what you're getting is maybe extend what is called Old Beach, maybe it's Old Beach and.
Can't.
Well, we can't extend Old Beach, but we can make another overlay. We can make another overlay in the other area.
Right. I think the key is that we'll end up needing to do I don't want to say an exercise, but we'll need to sit down, all of us looking at a map and go, my preference is where would you prefer to have them? Okay, but right now, it sounds like that there are some pretty reasonable concerns that deal with operations that aren't getting addressed. And so it may be that we continue to tighten down and use, how everyone feels, the current proposal as our baseline,
I think it's great.
and then see where to go from there. I mean, it's hard. We're trying to balance it. I'm hopeful, and it's hard to say that there are areas in the city that have usually operated some type of vacation rental, right? I know there are portions of the city that have. Was that?
Like the north end.
Right.
weekly rent.
Yeah.
Right, and so those may be easier to identify and just say, those areas that the commission is comfortable making a recommendation on, this is where these should go, this is where it's logical. It could be everywhere else you say no, it could be everywhere else you say, you can get a conditional use permit, but your bar is this high. And the
Make
onus
this
is on you to
citywide.
prove. What's that?
Well,
Make this citywide.
well,
I mean, why not?
well, I think that, you know, you can change things as in, you know, Old Beach is taken, I mean, it's taken a punch to the jaw without a doubt. But the north end probably, you know, versus, and I'm just throwing this out there, it's not in concrete by any means, but, you know, versus 2 weekly rentals to 1 weekly rental. And then what you have is you have a 7-day, you're not hitting, you know, you're going, you know, I mean, it's just, I'm just throwing it out
No,
there.
I was gonna bring that up when we get to that part.
Because you do have that,
Citywide,
at
make
the
that
north end, you
citywide.
do have that DC, Richmond, sort of Winchester, Petersburg group that comes in and they rent a house for 1 to 2 weeks at a time, or a month, or it's a family in Richmond that's their summer home, and then they rent it to a couple of their friends. I think that what Mike was trying to address a little bit, maybe 3 weeks out of the summer. Does that make sense? Okay.
I would also mention about the Old Beach overlay, that is the new ordinance that Richmond has passed for the entire city of Richmond.
Really?
Yes, and it took them 5 years to pass it.
I can, New Orleans did the same thing, where they said that your short-term rental has to be your primary residence, and there have been several reports that it has made a significant difference on the quality of people that are coming
Better.
and staying. Yeah.
And, you know, we'll see, they may get sued, who knows? It's not really, you know, something I look to.
The hard part for us is that, as Mr. Graham noted, there's areas that have seen this as a pretty regular use, that those that live there have done it, their families have done it, they have done it for many years. And so I don't want to ignore that portion also. So, I mean, we want to make sure we include that in the discussion, not saying that we need to open the faucet because it's already there, right? We're already wide open. But we do want to make sure that we recognize that there are areas of the city that have this, and it's something that the people that live there accept already as part of how they live. So,
They move into the neighborhood with that expectation.
Right.
Is what you're saying.
It'd probably cut down on police calls, cut down on emergency medical service calls.
311 calls.
311. Yeah, that's, you know, I guess my question to you all is, what would you like, of these three ordinances, are you okay with the civil penalties? Or do you think we should leave them as criminal penalties?
It's hard to enforce, it doesn't matter.
Well, and that's the whole point. Zoning shouldn't be used as the primary enforcement tool, although it will be, and that's what it will do, because you have the BZA out there, and you get to go to the BZA. We would make these a short-term time period, because they will be gone after a few months, so we would only give them 10 days to appeal to the BZA. We wouldn't give them the normal 30 days.
State code allows for recurring violations that are difficult to stop, because this also works for signs, or they keep putting them out and they pull them up, put them back, to shorten the time frame of appeal from 30 days to 10 days only.
Mike, you're an attorney, what do you think?
I'll go with the civil penalties, because, especially what Kay said about how many times you're gonna get enforcement of a criminal penalty anyway.
It's not.
So why go through all that?
Right.
I'm good with that. Y'all good with that?
I'm good with that as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Civil?
we're good with that?
Civil-
And then the other one was,
Wait.
get rid of the grant, let planning do a revocation of the grandfathering if it's vacant for 2 years. I use the 2 years, let me tell you, because that is the standard for a nonconformity. So if you were nonconforming, you can't have it vacant for more than 2
What
years.
brought that up? Has it happened?
No, it was a request from Mr. Jones.
Okay, I'm just
Councilman
curious, so
Jones.
it hasn't happened. We don't know of any,
We don't know of any.
Okay, I'm just curious.
We don't know of any. And I guess the neighborhood, again, and I hate to keep imposing this on the neighborhoods, but they'd be the people who said, hey, we got this, it's not being used as a,
Right. And to keep in mind that the burden of proof on a zoning violation is on the person that is cited the violation. So they will need to prove all of this, or we will continue to, with our evidence, be considered right, so.
okay, now, and so we like that one, and the 2 years is okay? Okay, and so I guess the third one is the Old Beach.
I personally think it's a no-brainer.
Okay,
George, and you seem to be closer to what are your thoughts?
I'm kind of reluctant because I live there. I'm just wanting the overall consensus of you guys. I don't want it to seem like I'm doing something preferably for
No,
me.
well,
We'd
you're
like to
not
hear
in
from
Old
you.
Beach.
No,
then
we
you
don't want
don't
to hear
vote
from
on
you.
Yeah,
Definitely
well,
hear from
Yeah,
you.
I do too.
it's just, I'm not happy with it at all, but, I mean, I was appointed here and I'm just going with the flow on the,
Oh, no.
on the ordinance,
No.
but
Do you think that that would make a difference, having it as a principal residence?
yeah, I think it'll help.
Yeah, it'd definitely help. I think Old Beach is definitely an established, stable neighborhood that we would like to protect.
You'd be more careful about
Did-
it's your house.
That's right.
Agreed.
Did you guys come up with these?
So,
Did y'all come up with these? How did that work? I'm just curious. I mean,
So we had a discussion with Councilmember Tower to go over some of his concerns, and we came back with some ideas, so.
okay. No, it's great. It's a great idea.
Councilman Towers' input.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's a great idea.
When it goes, I think when it goes back, it's gonna say request.
yeah, no, this is this, yeah. So, yeah. I can't say it.
Yeah, I guess
We're
my
on
next
video.
question would be, do you want to extend this to any other areas of the city? Now, this would still have to be vetted by the neighborhood, I think, if we moved it anywhere but Old Beach. But, I mean, Old Beach is inundated. I mean, really inundated. Do you want to do, let's see, would you want to do the ORD? Any place that's zoned oceanfront resort? Do you want to do Shadow Lawn? There are not a whole lot of
thought we
them
couldn't
in
do Shadow
Shadow Lawn yet.
I thought we could-
Shadow Lawn is the hot pot, is the next hot
Oh,
Hot
I
pick.
agree. I think
So I don't
I
know
think
whether should
Shadow
we
Lawn
try
is-
to
But I-
do it now so we can get ahead of the inundation that we're seeing in Old Beach?
I would vote for Shadow Lawn, and
Yeah.
I know we discussed when we all met before that pocket of between Shadow Lawn and where Old Beach stops. I guess that's part of the
Is that
OR.
the Pines, or what
It
what
was,
is that?
it was, no, Holly's
Holly?
is the other, is north of the Cavalier. It was, there's Sea Pines area,
Yes.
which is, we looked at, we had suggested guidelines is all we ever got in that area. And then,
That's north of Old Beach, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And then it's where, is it where Cook is? It's where Cook School is, down in south of 22nd Street.
It's called Lakewood.
It's
That's where I live.
It's where
Okay.
Mr. Alcaraz lives. So
So,
the key is, and so understand how it's easier for us to
said.
identify where there's a zoning district that is very specific or an overlay district that's very specific and was created for a reason of protection or something else. So the R5S district is one of the only zoning districts that was created that says you can, even though you have two lots that have existed, if they were in common ownership, you got to keep them together, and can only build one house fit on a 50-foot lot. So there were protections, there were regulations that protect the neighborhood to keep it the way it is. So in my mind, that I believe that zoning classification, since it's only in that area and is very specific, can be added to because it was created for protection already. Now, the other ones that don't have an overlay district, that's where we have the gap. I think that's that overall discussion of what we do with all of them, because there is a gap between Old Beach, in the Lakewood area, where Mr. Alcaraz lives, that isn't addressed yet, right? But I think the goal is that we will have the commission address all of those areas.
I think, like you said, we gotta sit down with a map,
Yes,
and look at a map.
yeah, we'll probably do it on a big board. but
I've got the
we
maps
just-
here, but I don't know if we'll get to that, so we will try.
Well, I don't think until 7.
We're all,
Just
Now,
kidding, just kidding, just kidding.
no,
Yeah, I vote no.
no, I vote no.
If we extend the overlay,
what actually we would do is we would just put the requirements in those houses, those STRs located in R5S. Okay, that's how we would do that. We wouldn't do an overlay. We just do the
well,
R5S.
we do that then if, in, like in Kings Grant,
Mm-hmm,
somebody could say, I own the house, so I want to do an Airbnb, and I've got, 3 parking spaces, 3-bedroom house, it's gonna be around.
yeah, it would only be in the Shadow Lawn and Old Beach. So in Kings Grant, anybody could come along and they could do short-term rentals. The house next to me, I live in Kings Grant. The house next to me was vacant for 3 years. And I kept thinking that's what they were gonna do with this house. So I don't know whether there was a market. Nobody wants to vacation in Kings Grant. So, it's not really near the ocean. It's not near the arena. It's not near the convention center. It's kind of a suburban, kind of out there. And so I'm not sure that would be economically feasible for people, but they could do it, just keep doing it. Now, when we do the overlay, and we do a whole STR overlay, that will be the only place you can have one. And Sandbridge,
I mean, I don't think we want them in those
in Kings Grant.
And so I think it's important to talk about how we about that.
Yes.
Yeah, we got 100 days.
Well, I don't know where everybody else is on this, but I just think it's important. I mean, I think it changes the dynamics of the neighborhood. I'm okay with somebody renting the house out to a native family or whatever, but I mean, or renting it to anybody, but I mean, when you start talking about,
Every
guys
3
renting the
days.
house, and then, 3 ladies renting the house, and, they're, going to the bathroom in the front yard, and your kids are playing football in the front yard. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but we heard stories today. I mean, I don't know, I just think it changed. I don't want it near my house. I'm sure a lot of people don't want it near their house.
In saying that, Whitney, in the 3 major items that council wants us to get back to them, we pretty much, I'm gonna say we pretty much covered them to a certain extent. Can we just send that back to them and then keep
Yes,
digging?
yes,
Keep working on.
I mean, you know what I mean?
yes, that's my point,
Yeah,
so.
I'm okay with that, because if we're
Yeah.
getting, this is a huge topic, and we can
Yeah.
get easily caught in
Yeah.
the weeds. I agree, I mean, the council want us to come back to them on these three items, let's get
Just,
that.
yeah,
done, and
get them
let's
3
get
items
back.
done with
Yeah,
and
no.
then
Let's
keep
get
digging. I
back.
mean, we've got next summer too, you know, it's gonna be here. I mean, not that I'm
I'm
saying it's gonna take
thinking-
that long.
No, we have to get this done, Dave. Not
So-
going next summer, huh?
No, we're gonna finish this.
No, I agree, no, sooner the better, but I mean, let's just get these 3 items back to
Totally
them.
agree with you.
Right, now, the key is that we do need to, there's consensus from the commission, we'll gladly finalize these ordinances and we'll have them for you on August, right? After we do
Yes.
public comment, okay?
Right.
So we'll go out to the public, have the public comment on it, and we'll bring it to you.
Would they be coming here, the council chambers for a public comment?
We'll have to schedule a meeting, and we would request some commissioners to attend potentially, but we'll allow them to provide comment on what's provided to them. We'll probably do presentation and then real quickly provide comment, so,
Okay.
Okay.
okay?
Next time, but I mean, so we're gonna plan another workshop with a map, so we can look at map and overlay districts.
Well, I was surprised, we made it through this pretty quickly.
I know.
So, we won't make through the next part really quickly, but I am hoping just to stop at 5 and say we need to pick back up at another time, or around 4:45, that way we can schedule the next meeting, which will be between your next, public hearing date, so, if we're good with this, we'll continue to move. Keep thinking about your comments that you have regarding the standards in 241.2, because my preference is that if you want to make changes to 241.2, we send it to council at the same time as this proposal for Old Beach. The reason being is because then everyone knows what they're looking to meet. So I have a bigger discussion to talk about kind of those issues here as we are, and I may be a bit out of order, but I'm gonna probably fast forward to sitting down and looking through 241.2 and go through those hot button issues. So, council has had robust conversations. Councilman Jones asked Ms. Wilson to bring back a number of the ordinances that he had, which dealt with creating a short-term rental overlay, where we would say this is where short-term rentals are okay. And
And
we,
nowhere else,
yes, and nowhere else.
What do you mean, no short-term rentals anywhere else?
right.
So that was how that was drafted, and we want to have that discussion. But yeah, the proposal would be to do it by right, as long as they meet all the requirements of 241.2, but it wasn't going to have that principal residence requirement.
It was not.
It was not. So again, this is just discussion. As we've heard, that it was just supposed to be, short-term rentals are permitted in these areas.
And we're looking at the oceanfront and the bayfront. We're looking at those areas,
Pretty much right around the water.
right around the water.
Now, again, this goes back to the question of, should they be allowed, if they don't meet those requirements, or if they are not in any of those areas by conditional use permit, which was, I think, another question. So if they could prove themselves that they meet those findings, should we allow someone to ask for a conditional use permit? Again, that wasn't requested, I'm just putting that out there. The planner has to say there is a logic to that, but at the end of the day, it may be better to close the door a little bit and figure it out, rather than doing that. But to me, at least that says your bar is high. If you can't meet the bar, it's really easy for us to say no and really hard for us to say yes, rather than the other way around right now where we just go through the list and go, well, looks good. So, so from the council discussion, there was this talk, and again, as Mr. Weiner noted, of kind of doing the band around the water as potentially being part of this. Last night, we got a little bit more direction from discussion at council about including other areas, so this is by no means an all-encompassing list of where this would be. Like I said, we need to sit down with a map, and we can do that if we have a moment. We'll pull the map out and just start drawing lines where we think this may be appropriate and where it may not be. Initially, it was thought to be shore drive overlay east of the Lesnar Bridge. I spelled Lesnar, oh no, I spelled it, fix it.
That's Lesnar.
Yeah, I spelled it wrong the first time, so I apologize. So what's in your packet spelled wrong. There was discussion about including other areas that are just adjacent to the bridge to the west, from council's discussion last night, and so again, we'll look at that. Areas east of Atlantic, of Pacific, and then as it changes or Atlantic, as it then changes to Pacific. So, starting from the north end and then going down, the areas east of it, which makes sense, because that is right adjacent to the beach. okay? And then also potentially thinking 1 block west of Atlantic Avenue, where it's just right there, and you're not going into the neighborhoods further that are west of Atlantic as you go further in. So again, we'll go through a map. This is just something that was just being spitballed, just so that you can kind of get your mind wrapped around the thought process. OR district is one that I'm unsure we'll get consensus on. OR, if you assemble enough property, you can build a hotel, so I'm not sure why you would not be allowed to operate a short-term rental there. But again, I know there's a lot of discussion that will go on that. And also portions of Croatan that are located within 2 blocks of the Atlantic Ocean. That's on there because that wasn't in that packet that was provided to Councilman Jones. Some of these may be taken off. Again, this is the will of the commission as your recommendation moving forward, but we're just putting out there the logical ones. Kevin, did you want to say anything? Okay.
So I got a quick question. According to what he likes here, and if this goes through and you have some in the pike that haven't come through to us, some applications haven't come through to us, and we pass this particular ordinance gets passed, that just in these particular areas, and there's one outside Bayside area, then they don't get it.
If you pass an ordinance,
Okay.
that
I know,
would
I keep
not
asking
allow
this
any,
twice
see, yeah, well, and none of what you're sending back says that.
Right,
That's just gonna carry on as usual in the other areas.
right now,
So,
right now.
Right.
so we go, let's take, my brain's a little scrambled. But if we go to areas east of Atlantic and Pacific Avenue, or the north end overlay, 1 block west of Atlantic Avenue, which would be the 200 block, what happens to the 3, 4, 500
You
block?
can't do it.
You can't
You
do
won't
an
be in the
SDR.
overlay. You won't be in that overlay, and so you may not do it,
You cannot have an STR.
right?
Okay, that's what I'm just checking.
Now, we could do it where you could apply for an STR with a CUP. That's not gonna cut down the number of CUPs that are making it to council. So,
I think initially it might not, but I think the key is that once people know we're going to recommend denial, they start backing off. What happens is the staff does a really good job of vetting these things, and I think, how many was it? Was it 50 that were withdrawn, or 40?
32?
Was it only 21? 21 were withdrawn before it even saw the light of day, and there are many others that we've had to massage to get them where they were, right? And so I think at first it may not, but as they realize how much tighter the regulations are, that we'll tell them, look, you have the right to apply, but I don't think it's a good idea, so.
Robin?
Could we, so we have the overlay where they're definitely allowed, and then, I guess, like, west and south of that have something like the Old Beach, I think that's what, the Old Beach overlay, where it has to be your primary residence. So it's not that way as a non-upper-class person who owns a house by the beach, I could still potentially benefit from,
We can make the rest of the city like that.
right,
Yep.
yeah.
So in the short drive overlay, you would not have to be a resident. You would not have to
No,
be-
you would not have to be a resident
Unless
if
we
they
make it-
do
I
this
don't
one.
like that.
I don't.
Unless we make
like
it that way.
either.
We can make that short.
You can change this,
Yeah.
this is just sort of,
Okay,
you
yeah,
can
I mean,
change
To me,
that.
that's a non-starter. I mean, it goes, that Cape Story by the Sea is a neighborhood. It's a family neighborhood.
Well, then you've got Bayville on the other side.
Right.
Maybe you-
It's
Bayview.
not
Is it
coming
Bayview?
down that
Well, you got-
far
you
Bayville.
got-
into
On the west side of Lesnar.
On the west side, that's.
Okay.
Bayside.
Babe,
Okay,
Yeah, Bayville.
nah, if you hadn't said anything, I would remember.
It's Bayview.
It's not Bayville, it's.
It's not? Oh, well. Our zoning administrator, what is that?
Bay Lake Pond?
Yeah, I got it.
just ask Kevin.
Yeah,
That's
Kevin's much
Kevin.
smarter than me.
The overlay will probably not reach Bay Lake Pines.
but there's the neighborhood.
I know the
that is-
name of
Where Zia Maria's is.
Well, that's Bay Lake Pines, but, or kind of just west of Bay Lake Pines, but there's a neighborhood that's between the Lesnar Bridge and, where Brownings Marine is.
Ocean Park.
Ocean Park.
Ocean Park. I mean, that's.
They were having a hard time with that, too.
I mean, mean, you know, you got that neighborhood, you got all along the bay right
Well,
there.
that's what we're gonna get the map out for.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was, and Ocean Park was the one where there was a discussion at council last night that said that one of the council members felt that that was a area that was, as long as they could meet all the criteria, was a potential area that could be conducive for, short-term rentals. So, again, I'm just trying to facilitate discussion so that we can try to hit all the points, so. I think Ms. Klein's point of offering it out there if it's your primary residence, I mean, it doesn't close the door completely, but it does say that your neighbor is the one that's operating it, not someone that has bought it and has chosen to operate it and not be there.
That's easier for me to digest.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay,
I
like it.
We could do the map exercise, but I think we're kind of on the hot button issues too, so if you're okay, we can come back to this map discussion, since you've kind of got your mind wrapped around it.
Okay.
Oops. So with this, I'm getting to the key issues for discussion, which is essentially 241.2. So, Kevin, I don't know if you want to take a moment to talk about how difficult your life has been on 241.2 and.
Well, no, I'll just say that what we have up on the screen here are just the issues that are, coming to light more often than not. It's what my staff is spending a lot of time on. It'll be no surprise, as you've seen a bunch of these applications, but we just put them up there as discussion points. I can interlude as we talk about them if you have specifics about how we look at each of these items. But, it's really, these are what we spend our time on. These are what we're getting feedback on as the issues.
So, we can start with the parking requirement in general. I know commission doesn't like the garages. Council said they don't like the garages.
I say we get rid of them.
Okay.
So we're not counting garages?
Well, I mean, they're not gonna, I don't think they're gonna be used.
Now, to me, I believe,
Garage can't be used.
What constitutes, so would a carport constitute garage,
It's not enclosed?
not enclosed?
we count it
Right.
if we said no garages.
You're saying even if they're open and available to be used, they won't use them. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, well, I mean,
Oh, speak for yourself.
yeah, I don't.
I would love
many
to use
people
my
ha-
garage, but I can't get in it.
On
Well,
vacation?
no, I mean, well,
Yeah, yeah.
but we're requiring when they do the inspection, they've got to open the door and they got to show that they got, you're saying, oh, they're just going to put stuff back in there. Is that what you're saying? I mean, what do you?
Yes.
If I'm cleaning my garage out, it's staying clean.
Well, no, I know, but, okay.
I think if they don't live there and it's a summer rental, SDR right now, there's nobody there to put stuff in the garage. People leave,
yeah.
The only thing left is trash.
If when they apply, they open the door and it's, as a car can fit in there, I don't know why we wouldn't count it.
Kevin, you.
I can
Are
play.
you opposed to that, Kevin?
Well, no, I can play devil's advocate on the last couple beach houses my family and I rented, where they had ping pong tables down there, an arcade machine, all the beach equipment was stored in there. I think that's the kind of thing we've seen or that we worry about, is that it has that alternate use.
So you're saying, so you really are saying, even though you take a picture of it and it's clean when they apply, it ain't gonna stay that way?
Well,
Right.
however, I will say the other side of that is it is an enforceable condition to the fact where if we are having an issue, we can ask them to raise the garage door and see what's inside and have them clean it out. So those are the two sides. Staff is by no means taking one side or the other, just,
Yeah.
when we look at these, that is the considerations we have.
The only way I was okay with getting rid of garages was because the parking reduction requirement.
So, I'll bring this to part of the discussion, but garages was a big one. The use of the right-of-way parking in the driveway was a big one. I think if we couple all those together and also talk about the actual required number of parking spaces, As we've looked at this and the more that we've listened to people and you know, I can tell you how many times Kevin gets, well, when I list it, or Summer will get, you know, when I list it, this is only for one family. It's only, they can only bring one car. Why do I need to have 2 parking spaces? It's a 2-bedroom. You know, we hear that all the time. So, if we step back and take a look at it and say, all right, 2 bedrooms is logical that only one family potentially would be able to rent it. If we remove the ability to use the garage, right, so this is coupled together, we would change potentially you could change the parking requirement, say, okay, you only need 1 parking space on site for up to a 2-bedroom short-term rental, okay? Then you would count, you would need a parking space for every additional bedroom that you had. So now, a 2-bedroom unit would only need 1 parking space, right? You kind of, in these areas, again, as you have to look at it as a whole. So I know that I'm gonna get a couple daggers staring at me on some of this. So you have to look at it as a whole.
Of frat brothers.
Right. So, but you look at it as a whole when you're looking at, okay, we're saying that this is an area that's okay. This is an area that's done it. They figured it out, right? And so we're trying to give credence to identifying those areas where it's been okay, and then also trying to have a more realistic kind of parking ratio that can be worked through, right? And again, I'm not, trust me, the frat brothers renting a house, it's a 2-bedroom, there's gonna be more issues than whether how many cars there are, right? So, I mean, you go down.
got it.
So, I mean, I'm looking at this from the people that keep arguing, I only rent this to one family. Why would I want 2 families here in this house? It's only 2 bedrooms. It's gonna make it hard for me to clean and get prepped for the next day. So that's why staff looked at it, again, with Ms. Wilson, to saying, okay, well, if we do that, then we probably should go ahead and remove the ability to count the garage too, right? Because you're making it, we're taking the more logical side on both sides, right? So how you operate, and then also the potential of the garage getting taken away.
I had a question, and I'm sure if Dave Redmond was here right now, he'd say, I don't care. But what do other localities do? I'm sure y'all have investigated that.
We have.
I'm just curious.
I have to pull it back up. Do you know any off the top of your head, Kevin?
We don't do research,
So while you're looking that up, if you don't mind, Dave, would the use of the right-of-way be like with the condition that there's no sidewalk?
Well, yes, that is
Kinda like what
what
we've been
sparked
dealing with?
this conversation is,
Yeah.
you know, parking plans coming to me for review where it's clearly the person's driveway. You know, it's not blocking a sidewalk, it's not in the right of way being on the street, that sort of thing, where
Right.
it's, you know, clearly, could that be looked at as acceptable parking?
As long as it's 9x18 space, right? As long as it's 9x18 space and doesn't encroach into the road or block the sidewalk.
Right, I mean, we're seeing all these, you know, situations where a 9x18 space is half in the right of way, half off. Well,
Yeah.
you know, by the law of the zoning ordinance, they do not have that parking space
Okay.
on site, even though, you know, you walk down the street and for all intensive purposes, you know, they have that space.
But I think it needs to say in there, and I think council talked about this too, if the city, Virginia Power, whoever needs to take that right away, they lose their conditional use permit.
Because they won't have parking.
Because they won't have parking. They won't meet the parking requirement.
Right, if they fell deficient
Right.
from that
Correct.
size. That's fair.
Usually that right away, if it's utilities or something like that, is usually just for the purpose of doing work and putting it back.
Sure, exactly. And it's not gonna happen, but it should be I think it should be in the ordinance to lose their conditional use permit if that right away needs to be taken away for some reason whatsoever. Just a thought.
It happened a lot.
No, it's probably never gonna happen. But, I'm just saying, it should be in there, just like enforcement, you know?
Okay.
I mean,
David wants that in there, we're putting it in there.
I mean, essentially, there is a parking plan that's approved. If they lost the parking plan, we would go down the path of saying you're non-compliant anyway. So, I mean, it's there, it's just not in the words, right? Because we've approved a specific parking plan.
And no matter where it is in the city, you cannot pave your whole front yard with concrete for making.
That's a much
Prior
bigger,
to,
well,
Yeah.
that's a much bigger discussion because that's a global requirement. So, if you want to have that discussion, I'll gladly have the commission direct staff to do that so that I don't get taken to the wood shop on that one. But, so the key is that the ordinance now limits people to how wide their driveway apron is, their curb cut and their access. But unless there's a impervious cover limit, there's nothing that stops them from paving the yard now, even if it's just a single-family house.
Is that
So-
everywhere?
Everywhere
the
except
city?
for North End, and who else has
Close to
is
water.
it just North End that has a impervious cover requirement? Or Old Beach as well?
There are some other properties, it's the R5R zoning
R5R, that's
district,
right.
which is predominantly north end, but there is also some scattered in the Shore Drive area.
Short driver, yeah.
Right, so there's a,
Oh, that's right. We had that discussion on oyster shells versus gravel versus sand.
And crush and run is not considered permeable.
No.
No,
That blows my mind.
It's not?
No. What do you think's on the impermeable pavers?
we,
You
They
get
don't
the-
work.
You don't get the same calculation as you would for a grass area.
And they have to be cleaned. And if you don't clean them, then they're impervious. So
That's
It's no
that's the
longer
problem.
Really, it's no longer feasible to do that.
What, the pavers?
as I,
Bill
Hey.
looks
But you
better.
can put crush and run down?
Crush and run is impervious.
I guess that's.
as
It'll
I,
soak that water up just like that.
as I understand it, our Development Service Center, they used to give a credit based on manufacturer standards, X percentage, and they had a calculation, but for exactly those reasons, the maintenance and that sort of thing, they got rid of that and now just consider it impervious surface.
And they have to be put in correctly. I mean, it's not like you can just lay crush and run down and
Oh, you
put
got-
on these,
you gotta think
with some
about putting-
sand in between them. You have to go beneath them and.
Actually, you should put pea gravel, put gravel in there.
Okay, pea gravel, and,
There's-
yeah.
Sorry.
no, that's okay.
So did you find anything?
I have some parking figures, if you would like to.
Just curious.
Okay, this is, again, this was done several months ago, so I'm not sure if ordinances have changed. And this was done looking at cities that we kind of viewed comparable as far as the aspect of, being a beach tourist type city. But Savannah, Georgia, no parking requirement. Charleston, South Carolina, one space in addition to existing use on-site requirement. So if a single family required 2 on-site spaces, it would be 2 plus 1. Wilmington, North Carolina, no more than 3 vehicles on the site at one time, and they must be parked behind the front plane of the home. Jersey City, New Jersey, 1 vehicle per 2 occupants. All parking must be listed with registration, including off-site. So they make it a special registration for parking. And then Washington DC, no additional parking than what the principal use is.
I was about to say
So
that.
they-
might be
I like
parking
that.
anyway.
Yeah, there's no parking available. So those are the cities we looked at when we did our kind
What
of.
does it say about garage? Is the garage included, or does it say that?
It did not mention
Okay.
the garage. It referred back to whatever was in their base ordinance, which for us, garage parking does not
Okay.
count.
All right.
So
Is this something we need to come to a consensus today on this stuff, or we're just having a
I
discussion?
don't think so. We just need to kind of
Walk
we need
through.
to walk through these because these were things that you've discussed, right? There's been lots of discussion that I don't believe that parking. Okay, well then, what's believable? And again,
What
like I
is-
said, you have to look at this kind of coupled together with the same fact that you're gonna say, is it okay if it's my principal residence, right? Are we gonna make someone do something different to their house if it's their principal residence? Or if we're gonna say it's okay in these areas because they've historically done it, well, they've figured it out for many years. So we'll just say, this is the base requirement, you'll continue to figure it out like you have for many of years. So that's the thought, not saying that this is right, I'm just saying that that was the impetus of looking at it together with the other things that we're looking at, so. I know there's been we had the discussion right now about the driveway, we'll gladly can put some language in there that says if there's a sidewalk present, that nothing past the sidewalk counts. But there has been discussion of using the driveway at all, but if, it sounds like that we're a little bit more on the same page on that, that we're okay. Number of stays per week. The ordinance now says you can have two. Mr. Alcaraz has noted a very strong point that it's tough because you're educating two people.
Now, you
Right.
can also do it, and it's just a thought that I throw out, do it as a season. Labor Day to Memorial Day would be, one, and then you would do the shoulders as two.
What were you gonna say, Kevin? Nothing. I thought, yeah, you were gonna say something like that.
Or you could do two and then let the shoulders be three. I mean, you could do it as, break
I
up the
don't think any more than
seasons.
two.
But
More
one,
than two.
one thing is that, if we're affecting it would affect the Sandbridge also area.
Yes.
As well, because it's be part of the conditions then.
So, that being said, then like if you were doing Old Beach, well, then that wouldn't, I don't know, I was trying to decide, I don't know, never mind, keep moving.
Well-
Never mind.
I mean, I like what Kate said about that.
I mean, you could try that if you wanted to try that. It's a lot of, I mean, most of the institutional Airbnbs wanted three. And the compromise was at two, so maybe that's the compromise that needs to go forward.
I mean, it can stay that way, but again, we've heard concerns about that wraparound,
Yeah, that's
right? So, and if we're concerned about, and as Mr. Wall pointed out, if we're concerned about dealing with Sandbridge, we could subset Sandbridge being,
Can
saying
you-
they can have two while the rest of the city
Can
only
you
has one.
separate?
Yeah, we could separate Sandbridge out.
I think
Yeah.
Sandbridge.
I think
should-
we should, I personally would vote to separate Sandbridge out of what we would do.
We tried not to do that just for uniformity's sake.
Right,
but
but
it's kinda
I
hard
don't
to
think
do
we're,
But
yeah,
Sandbridge is a overlay unto itself.
We should have a 241.2 Sandbridge.
No. We could call it out where, right now it says that you can have two rentals per week. You can just, if we switch it to one rental per week unless located in the Sandbridge SSD.
Yeah.
Right, that's
Yeah.
fine, that's
I
fine.
think,
Yeah, we can do that.
I mean, now that's a big change. I've always had trying to get my mind wrapped around, the rental and saying that two is okay, the way the ordinance is written now. A lot of the ones that I've dealt with have weekly rentals. I know Kevin has one coming up. I think you only got it for a few days, right? So I guess the goal is to give people the chance to fill up all they can, but, again, the impact is big. So if you want to go with one, we can do that and keep going.
But it's, and one thing is it's one per 7-day period.
Correct.
You can also do in any of the overlays. In the overlays themselves, Shore Drive, North Beach, those are kind of overlays, you can make them different, as long as we can justify it.
As in,
The North End always wanted one stay per week. If we go with two, and we could say that in the North End overlay, it would only be one. Because it's a created overlay.
The number of occupants has always come up. The hard part, I think, is that right now we're 3 per bedroom. But that's looking at someone using the whole house. So, I know that there's been discussion saying, well, 3 people aren't gonna stay in a bedroom. It's like, yes, we know that. It's just for the calculation purposes of how many people. I'm not sure if the commission has any concerns of the 3 per bedroom.
I think when we did that originally, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was due to the fact that we were thinking parents and baby, or 3 small siblings. We weren't?
No,
We
this is a
That's what I was
cumulative.
thinking.
No, this is a cumulative number. It doesn't have anything to do with how many people are actually in the bedroom.
Right, but we were just,
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with that. Bedrooms are easy to count, and so we counted those and said, okay.
that was
it also had something to do with cars too, because if you had 3 people in a bedroom, 3 people in a car, 3 cars, 6, 9 people.
Never mind, David, let it go.
It's not about how many people are in the bedroom.
Yeah, yeah.
They can all sleep in one bedroom, I don't care.
Well, we can't count them anyway. Can't go in there.
Yeah,
You can't go in and count them anyway, that's right.
I have no problem with 3 per bedroom.
Kevin, no.
That's nothing you can.
Well, we can't.
No, I can't enforce
We
it.
can control the listing.
Right. I think Kevin brings, he's reminding me of a good point. With the ability that we have now with host compliance on board, we can control the listings. So we'll run what's approved versus what's the listing, and if the listing's wrong, it's an automatic violation. You're
So
attempting to
So
operate
it's
illegally.
less about counting as what you can advertise it for. And that's where the, mechanism of enforcement is, and neighborhood protection is for that.
I bring that up as a concern because I know it has come up. I think we've gotten our head wrapped around it a little bit more, understanding how it functions. Some localities do 2 per bedroom plus X extra. It's the same thing. It doesn't get us anywhere different. So, I mean, it's just mostly dealing with those families that may bring their friend with them, right? So, just kind of dealing with that. If there's no concern there, we'll keep it at 3. Why did I write number of events? We do want to change the condition that deals with the events, that you can have an event with X number of people. We'll probably change that to reflect the current condition that happened the very first short-term rentals city council meeting, where Councilman Tower changed it where no special events are permitted on a short-term rental. That just aligns with what we've been doing anyway. So just unless you wanted to revisit that, we'll
I like that condition.
So.
Y'all like that condition that's in there now?
Yeah, I think when we have a special event, you get all your neighbors involved and everyone's for it. When you have 3 events in a neighborhood, that's somebody else's frat party that you're talking about, then that's where it gets out of hand. I agree.
We will just transpose that language and put it back in.
Okay.
Still going to 2? Is that what you're saying?
No events. So right now, the conditions that come forward to you has that revised condition saying that special events permits can be granted to a property. So it should have been read the other way, where technically a property owner could have an event and could have up to, I think, 300 people or something, Kay? I forget, with a special event permit.
And special events don't kick in till 2:50.
Yeah, to 250, but we actually put a number that dropped it, but it just got better to where you just, 150. So we dropped the number thinking we were being more restrictive, but it actually brought light to something that we probably should just say you can't do. So that's where that ends up going.
And one reason, because it would be just used as commercial use, so it'd be part of the whole operation of the industry that they were conducting there, so.
Right.
Okay.
So, we did talk about this already, discussing kind of the by right short-term rentals and a potential overlay district that we would need to sit down and hash out. And then that larger discussion of would we want to allow people outside of that overlay to apply for a conditional use permit with a high bar, where they have to meet those findings. I know that there was a discussion Ms. Klein had brought up and everyone seemed to be okay with that, allowing it if it's your principal residence anywhere in the city, that as long as it's your principal residence, you could do that by right as well. That sounded like there was some consensus on that. I just want to verify that the commission was okay with that. Okay, so then the question is, do we want to allow people that are outside of that want to try to prove their case to be able to ask?
Where it's not a principal residence.
Correct. Or they can't meet the parking requirement, or they can't meet the 30-minute requirement. I don't know.
So I would say yes, because of special circumstances, like the guy that we saw with the questionable host, where he had a property, a duplex, and he lived in one property and wanted to rent out the other side of the duplex. Like, that's an exception that I would be willing to make. And so for that reason, I think that we should maintain the ability to keep the CUP.
That's almost home sharing.
I know, it almost is. But by to the point, by the letter of what we're discussing now, it's not because it's a duplex, it's not, the other unit is not his primary residence, so he couldn't rent it out,
Right.
right? And so, that's either just a big X and no, or as Ms. Klein said, you have someone that's essentially doing home sharing, because they just happen to have a duplex. They stay in one, they're there watching it, and they rent out the other one. So, that's a special circumstance that someone could make a logical argument in front of the commission and council, right? The person in the middle of nowhere saying, I just want to do it just because, that's, their bar is it's too hard. In the middle of Kings Grant, in the middle of, Bayville, it's too hard.
What happens if the guy in the back unit sells it and moves? Now we no longer have the owner on premises.
I think because he's asking for conditional use permit, you can condition that,
So that's,
He loses
then it loses the permit for
Right.
that front unit.
right? As long as it's conditioned that way, you could, and they change what they've been conditioned to, it would be no longer valid.
That's a permit for person or property.
It's to the property.
Property.
So it would go with, whoever owns the property wanted to operate it, they'd have to live in the back unit and
They'd have to operate the same way.
the same way, correct?
And that could be caught through the Commissioner of Revenue process, because they would have to change the name for the taxes, and then we would have to approve it, and they have a little checkbox that says name change. So, in a perfect world where our processes flow, we would catch that pretty easy.
We would catch that.
So, I know that's probably a much bigger discussion.
That's a broad,
It's a very
Yeah.
broad discussion. I don't know if we want to let it sit. Ms. Klein's example is a very good one. It could be one that there's someone next to the amphitheater that's on a corner that's near the exit of the neighborhood. And they could say, I'm near something and there's a need, right? Or the sportsplex, or, where there's no hotels down right around here. And so there is a potential for a real need of accommodations, but again, at the end of the day, they'd have to prove it rather than us saying, you meet all the requirements.
I don't have a problem with that.
No, either.
Huh? There is always an exception to the rule.
And that's really what the conditional use permit should be used for the exception, and the bar is high,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, they could have a lot of parking. They could have, a huge driveway that allows for, and, isolated, yeah.
Okay. So we've kind of worked around, all right, so now we just need to identify, we can try,
Look, Bobby's
we got 40 minutes, we can try if you want. I'll put some easels up and we can discuss kind of the overlay.
What do you-
What I'd like to do-
Can't we leave at 4:30? I'm sorry.
He wants to
I
leave
say
at
I'd like to do
4:30.
it, but I kind of don't want to do it.
What don't you
But
wanna do?
I need to do it is, I wouldn't do it without conditions, but for the bayfront area, I almost feel like I need some input from the bayfront.
Yes, you
Bayfront
do.
Advisory board,
Well, you need perhaps some input from Mr. Jones and Mr. Wood.
I agree. I feel like this is a pretty
You do.
big thing, and, short-term rentals serve a purpose, no question. When somebody's coming in town, they got family, it's a great place where they can rent a place where they can all be in one place, not in separate hotel rooms, I get it, but there's also the other side where it changes the dynamics of the neighborhood. So I
Or if you
really
get-
feel like need to go talk to.
You want to go talk to people?
Or if you got family coming to town and you don't want them to stay with you.
That's right.
Yeah, well, yes, a family coming in town in September, they're not staying with us.
Oh, so you need a short-term rental?
Yes. They're actually staying right behind Mr. Alvarez.
Yeah?
Did you get that address?
Found a place for the other side of town.
Because they can call 311 and nobody's going to answer because they're not on the list.
So,
George, I'm sorry.
we completely agree that we're gonna have to go to all the stakeholder bodies. And again, not saying that the commission shouldn't also go and seek that input. I offer the ability just to at least look at the maps and maybe not draw lines, but to get an idea and understanding of the things we're talking about. And we can come back at another date in the next week or two to actually, or later, we've already hammered out Old Beach, so we know, we've got our direction to take care of that. And the 241.2 changes that you're comfortable with, so we can have that prepared for you and go out to public comment if you're comfortable with that.
I say we got a little bit of time, throw the maps out, let us take a look at it,
Get some ideas.
throw it up to council. They're gonna bat this back, trust me. Because, and.
By the time of your August meeting, there will probably be other ordinances
And
referred.
we have to have public meetings anyway,
Right.
so then that'll, sort of rein some things in too. But, I mean, we're here. I know everybody wants to go, but we're here. And Bobby.
You just give us a couple
put lot
minutes
of
to
work
set the
into
maps
it.
up, we'll put them on easels, and we can give you the opportunity to take a look at them.
I know, don't moan at me. We're here. We gotta get it done. You ain't have anywhere to go. I'm the one with the.
You are pushing back happy hour.
What's that?
Exactly.
What's that?
Yeah, she's pushing back happy hour. She's pushing back my happy hour.
There's gonna be no problem with what they want. They're gonna put it back out.
Guess we should put our mask on.
Hey,
Be inside.
well, no, we could let people go through, but that was not the, what we got as, Mr. Tower said, no, let's just cut it off. We're trying, we're afraid, particularly when this gets out, that we're looking to do this, that you'll get the rush of all day, and they'll think, as long as I get the pipeline, I'm good, and we'll get crappy things, and people will just inundate planning. And sometimes, we have normally done that. So we may not, it may not pass at council, so I mean, and we're just giving you what we were told to do. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
She called me and
Which one did you want? Pacific 3, Shore 1, and Pacific 2.
Let's go ahead and just open them all up.
Just ignore me.
Oh, is that what it is?
Neptune guy? Yeah. Neptune guy, gonna do it?
But I was just concerned, I mean, if you do that, that would work. Right.
Oh, is
Yeah. It was like the wedding, you know, no special events. Special events for weddings. Perfect.
Okay, well, you probably, Miss Oliver, perhaps what we want to do, since we're not really going to have discussion, is to get off the air.
Yeah, that would be great.
Wait a minute, we did tell them,
time following us,
wait a minute,
I didn't know if there was further discussion.
can we do that?
So we are live on air right now.
Can we do that? Wait a minute, Dee. We said to people we would. It'll be a public meeting. And will be shown on television.
But not,
Just explain what we're gonna do and that you won't hear anything because we can't get the mics. Yeah, we're just gonna show it. It will be shown, but there will be no more discussion. And I click on. You want me to do it?
No, I can happily do it, but what are we showing?
Oh, they just want to show the.
Okay, so at this time, just want to let all our people that are watching,
Yeah, I'll record on it.
Yeah, you're actually blocked right now. You're open, you can see it.
can they? So at this time, the commission and our planning director and our planning staff, along with our deputy city attorney, we're going to go and look at some maps of our fine city, and you won't be able to actually hear our discussions, but you will be able to watch us. Oh, we won't actually, we're not going to have any discussion. We're actually coming off camera. Oh, you might be able to see us. I don't know. But you won't be able to hear anything because, Can you see the maps?
No?
No. Okay, so we're going to go look at some maps at this time, and then we will be back. We won't be back. We won't. This is one of the first times that we've done this virtually. We're all going to convene, and we will be back. We will not be having any group discussion. Oh, my gosh. How could I have blocked this?
You'd be a good newscaster.
Well, I live in Coast, behind the Ratio, on the water. I used to, lived in 3 places.
Then we went, I remember you pointed out, one place that you
That's divided.
That's a good reason, you know, that's a new sports complex. So we all just here to do
Yeah, exactly. 53rd Street.
So that should be all.
This is,
Did that on 53rd.
yes, this is Old Beach. This is George.
If you guys can hang. No, we can't. We're gonna wrap up at 5, so I'm not gonna keep this late.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Yeah, this is all. You guys are gonna go back. We're gonna reconvene and just say, we're gonna decide the next meeting, so probably we'll reconvene. That's fine. We were just, making sure we do exactly. Yes, no, thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, it's kind of unique.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I think that's BB right there.
So we can already.
Hey, that's pretty good. Yes.
No, that's a small portion, it's, pirates, for all the names.
Yeah, they seem to be little neighborhoods.
That's our ten, and not part of the overlay.
This is, yeah, this is a gap. This is a gap. Right?
Funny, 'cause this is
But
what,
convention center, sports center, visitors center,
probably,
Boca, I mean, you've got OR, dense development, mixed use.
so that's 48.
I don't know if that should be the same as Old Beach. I mean, that's the hard part.
I have a question. If we create the overlay, at some point, hopefully, we see this redevelopment. So that's a trailer park. Hopefully, we see all of this redeveloped. If we create an overlay, does that create any problems down the road?
We can always add to the overlay.
Okay. That's my question.
So don't be bound, look, I'll just offer this and we'll be careful to have non-policy, policy discussions without the microphones on. So, don't look at the colors here as your sole basis of what you need to do. It could be that you just kind of go right down here and say, I think it's only okay right here, right? So, I mean, or you could say, I'd like to protect this, and we'll need to probably sit and mark up a map and do that, and as you start thinking about it, but, don't be bound only by this, because we're gonna create an overlay, which will be a long process, but we'll do that, and then.
No. Might have one in the office.
I was gonna say a Sharpie or some marker.
I know this area pretty well, but you guys really work better than
Remember to bring them next time.
anybody.
Yes, if you do it without
I brought you lunch today, kid. That was
gonna end up
lovely.
going.
Huh?
I said, I brought you lunch today, wasn't that enough?
It was really
I was gonna say, how was that new salad?
Oh, it was fabulous.
And actually, I didn't bring that. I just made sure Delina ordered it.
I'm surprised it's not more.
And especially again, like where the townhouses are. Because we've seen previous.
We had one last 2 weeks ago, terrace out.
Yeah.
Come on.
And I'm sitting here just deleting.
Yeah, oh, are you?
When I get more emails.
Is it gonna be a problem later on that you deleted all that? Hey, this one has street names and numbers, Summer.
Yes.
It has the nesting sites identified, and it has some street numbers. See, this one has a little bit of stuff.
Okay, that one's
It's just so hard to see them.
I think they're gonna.
Unless
Because I've gotten several calls and
These maps
one
don't
was,
have the best street
like,
labels on them, so.
has it already gone by?
This one, this one's,
See, it had already
yeah,
come
this
through
one's
us,
coming close to being
but it
reasonable
was
to
at
use.
council, and I said, you can have.
Cause at least with the ocean on it,
And
and you knowing, you know which part, and knowing which part of it
turned out the entire street.
you know this is east. So you
By
know
the
this is
time
north.
they realized, and they were across the street, and I don't
It's,
think they
town
understand.
Black Mountain, just
I
outside
don't think
Asheville.
some people understand exactly
There's 19 others.
what it is. Not, you know, we do because that's all we do, you know, legally, that's all we do. But I don't think everybody,
But basically, they don't understand what exactly.
What's wrong with
it is,
y'all?
and They don't understand.
Everybody?
My family and.
they don't know what they're supposed to do.
Sister's family, so there will be 6 kids and 4 kids.
And if it's good.
Yeah, what does that mean? And I don't wanna upset my neighbor, it's the same thing with George.
She said it was 20-ish minutes on the other side of her. You know, so it should be opposite direction of coming here.
You need to go talk to your.
It's some people just sort of think, let's go ride by and
She was
they'll
also looking at.
think that you're
Adding
on to your house. It's a permit, or you're doing renovations, or you're putting in a pool. I mean,
It
you
might have
don't
just been
actually.
like.
They don't pay attention.
They don't pay, well, I just don't think that,
So we're gonna have to do
especially,
that. So we might as well do it raw, but if
I mean, if you're not,
I agree.
we're good.
people just don't.
I agree.
A lot of people don't even know who's on their city council.
Hone in on your, what's going on, would that have prevented
And they think we play for the whole city. Everything
in
happens.
this area?
Everything is already
Even-
happening.
Even including here,
Like when the apartment.
they had to be a resident of the house.
I know they do, we do. Six months in one day. Well, you can,
6 months in one day.
home share, if you weren't renting it, it's home share. But the original part of the Airbnb was, you were in California, you wanted to come to the East Coast for 2 weeks, and then somebody on the East Coast was looking for a house to go to San Diego, and that's sort of how it started.
And that there was, 3 people that were complaining about VMRC permit, that's the
Right.
Marine
Right, yes,
Resources.
that's our people too.
Yeah, and,
I got one guy today.
That was it?
right, no, and then there were 3 black
Okay, I saw that lady wearing a mask. Is that allowed?
So you and I already passed, we already know you can't, it'll take a year to put that in on.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, I mean, I think we need the input.
Yeah. So,
Is that,
because Bobby
can you
really
really
said,
Because you're not that, is that?
I think it takes, okay, so,
Okay.
we all know this
All right,
is
you
old
wanted to
beach.
go?
We all, this is old beach.
Because I just
Shadow
found out my
was fairly
cousin's son has
protected
got an embroidery
at the time,
business.
right?
Right, that,
I don't
based
know
on
where he lives,
commission's
but
direction, we'll
called
be putting
cruel
it in the old
and
beach.
unusual.
Doing
Can
the
you
same thing.
conclude?
We're gonna do the
Like
same thing as
embroidery?
old beach, not
I don't know
include
if
it
you know
in,
that
but we
that
write
cruel
it
is a
in
type
the.
of needlepoint.
Same.
You're kind of young for.
Right, so how long does it take to create this
CREW.
overlay?
So it's different, so R5S only exists there.
Right, for shadow on.
All we're doing is we're just,
Oh, yeah, no, I know you don't.
creating an overlay.
I'm not saying you don't, I just wasn't
So
sure if you.
for short-term rental located in the R5S district,
I consider
It
we'll
goes
put
that
that
way.
requirement.
Okay, so,
The hard part is the scale.
so that takes about a year.
flowers.
Yes.
Is that right? Put in
Yeah, and I think of that as being
We-
a toy
well,
craft or.
Needle
It's not realistically.
Yes, we'd have to vet it, I'd have to mail everybody that's affected. I mean, we do public meetings, it's a pretty, it's a
Because there
pretty.
is no overlay to work.
Candle wicking too.
Correct, there's nothing, there's
You have to
nothing.
create it.
do a moratorium.
I'm doing this 5
Stop.
years.
So we could have a
Years,
rush.
I've done it with 4
We could.
different boards.
You
2
can-
creative
You
especially
can
for
consider a
STRs.
stopgap rule, we maybe want to discuss this
Council
as we.
Planning
read
Commission,
the
we
meetings. I
did
don't
2
want to
boards
here.
specifically for STRs and then
Stopgap rules.
teachers and
we
waterways.
Allow the ones that are owned by,
5 years.
and then we'll come
We
back to
do,
something
I swear.
as we go out, so. That's tough, but.
So
what's our
people
next
were
step?
against this VMRC permit, remember what street it was on?
It was, I think
For
it was
the
back in
three,
May.
for the ordinances that you have,
They
are
were,
given consensus on, we'll bring it to
angry,
you in August.
not about DPD, it was a project the city is
Recommendations
doing
for that,
with the
we'll
Army
publish
Corps.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't
Post it on
like,
the
It's,
website,
rock falls.
before we do that special Senate information, and then we'll.
Oysters.
We'll have a public comment meeting.
So they would come here to talk about it.
They will, I mean,
Okay.
so it'll be, we'll do 2, so we wanna make sure we capture the comments that are important there too.
I kinda wish open mic would come first, so I could
So
come in
what
and
would
see
you
if
like
we
us
could
to
go home.
do now that we have viewed the maps?
It's like so dark
Uh,
and long, and if I
I
see
think it is, seeing the gaps, I wanna make sure that everyone's noticed, we kind of walk through.
So,
Shore Drive,
I wrote
Shore
a
Drive
note
is
when
up
I
here on
was
this
listening.
table, so just kind of,
You
kind of getting your mind
So
around it.
where there is no
State
overlay is what you
code
want
for
us to say.
moratorium.
Right,
So
or-
right there where the Hollies is.
Or there's
Or
just no,
even think about,
no provision in
You
state
know,
code for
where would
moratorium
you
on
think it
anything.
would be okay to just say it's permitted by right if you
I
have all
would
the
do that.
requirements?
I think they have.
Because if you look at an overlay like Shore Drive,
Because I noticed
the
at least one
overlay
person
is
left on the
large,
city council
Yes.
where
saying
short-term
we need to
rentals
do a
may not
moratorium.
be,
So next time I wanna
you know,
respond and say, there's
there's gonna
currently
be a
nothing
different
in the state
dynamic
code that
here
would
Yeah,
permit
you
the
go.
city to do that. And I wanna be correct in saying it.
That's family
And,
oriented.
cause
So
then that
there's
comes down to
different
whether you
types of
go to your state
neighborhoods,
senators or
more
something,
so
or
than
None of your
state.
legislators.
You
The
go to your
overlay doesn't
legislatures,
have to align with
if you
overlay, so
wanna
it'll be a
change
new
it
drawing,
now,
which is where we'll have to get that market and start
So you
drawing.
can put it in within the overlay. Okay.
So.
Is
I think
that
there's
Shore
a-
Drive?
I think there's a much bigger discussion, I just wanted to be able to have you look at it.
Mr.
What's that?
Mr.
Oh, that's the hotel.
Mr. Jones.
This is his side.
This is
Mr.
his,
Wood's side.
Mr. Wood's.
So one thing is,
I'm
it could cut down the number of issues from if it was by right, of course it was by right.
He doesn't want to take it all.
Yeah, so here's where you
Yeah, just wanted to let you know that.
Right, but I mean,
Yeah, Kevin.
I don't know.
Yeah, but out here.
You know what I mean? And they don't know what it's like.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm telling you, I'm blaming someone, I can use some kind of.
Avenues, yes, yeah, but if it's the,
Then short-term rentals.
It's really just because we're about to hit the border.
where it all went down
Because
right
what you're
here.
doing out there, I can't.
Right, no, I think that's where we need to really sit down and really go to market and say, what is the right, what is the right? And then we go out, we ask the crowd, is this the right?
That's,
And eventually there may have to be a.
Just tell me.
I don't, I think this is.
5 by 5, is that, okay.
We hear you, but we disagree. But we should-
So what else, I didn't actually hear everything that was in here, or walking people downstairs and, so what was that you said that, cause I always went to Barberton School for a little bit of not just as each Barberton.
So this is Richard Boulevard, over here is extension sports flag.
Exactly, well, that's what I was gonna say, that little finger is there, and, the people I knew who lived there were,
Right here,
like,
this is North.
practically the girl came out in society, kind of contained, you
Well,
know,
the state said we
kind
can't
of,
acquire.
I was married couple of attorneys that I met, and they lived in that, so they had a kid, and they gave it here. Okay, so there, it shows you their level, right? And,
Yeah, like, you're talking
actually
like,
recently heard they moved to Richardson, DC,
From,
but,
whatever.
this neighborhood's
so
gonna
I
be
was really
there.
thinking
They're,
we should change the name of sketchy.
they're getting ready to go.
I don't know if you understand what real.
Was it with the Marina Shores? Is that they don't know?
Nah, Marie Shores is, Marie Shores is,
Right across.
I'm sorry, this is map, it's kind of a map.
yeah,
hard.
so here's Marie Shores right here.
But at the same time, we can't ignore
Actually,
the Yes, that's what I wanted to do next. So, schedule the next meeting. Yeah, you can just put them.
So, this is like, here's the Leicester Bridge. Here's where the,
3 minutes to get back.
Get their act together.
right there, and then this is Ocean Park, and then there's apartments slated to go into here, and then Aries on the Bay is what's up here.
Oh, yeah, my one's.
So you got a lot of rental areas to be.
3 minutes.
So we can get back, so we can schedule our next meeting.
Usually goes to the, usually go back to their office.
I saw them finish it today, and I'm like, that's amazing.
I did eat it off like 45 minutes. Already?
See, you just damaged it. Broke, yeah, now you have to take that one home with you. You break it, you buy it.
Short-term rental ordinance, they
Kevin figured out, Jerry rigged that one good.
That was a nice addition right there.
Now, this short-term rental ordinance is an overlay, it would only be, it would not have,
So you learn everywhere, when you go to the school of hard knocks too. You want me to do what? All right, I'll figure it out.
All right, this one is going like this. Once the kids get out of the house.
I usually have to grab it, yeah. Oh, there you go, you got it. That makes no sense to
I
turn
think
it.
a lot of people do that. Yeah, once the kids get out of the house, they're like, I don't need this yet.
he'll just complain later if that like.
Probably that too.
That's perfect, no problem. I have extras of all of it, so.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Back this up before I break it.
That one doesn't have a box.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
as we look to try to close up our workshop meeting, I do appreciate the commission's patience with staff and through the discussion that we've had. There are multiple copies of these maps that we were reviewing. If you would like to take some with you to kind of continue to dive into some of the concerns as we try to fill in gaps and understand what rules would apply how, please feel free to take any copies that you want for yourself. What we do want to do is potentially, set a meeting for public comment, and I'll have to double check. So if we could get a couple dates, potentially on the week of the, what do you think, Kay? The week of the 20th, maybe? If I can get a couple dates at the convention center to allow for public comment on just the ordinances that are that you've already agreed to, which would be the Old Beach, the ones that were referred by Mr. Tower, also including the R5S district as well in that.
Okay.
So, the week of the 20th, if we do a night meeting for the public, if any of the commissioners are available, I wouldn't say all of you would be necessary, but it would be nice to be able to have commissioners available for that.
Sure.
And staff could run a comment.
Do a
period.
night meeting at 6.
Typically, we would run it at 6, so to allow people a chance to get there.
Right.
So
6 to 8.
6 to 8. So it'd be 6 to 8 sometime during the week of the 20th. And how's everyone's availability for that week?
I'm
I'm actually wide open that week.
I'm not
I am
available the
not-
21st.
the 23rd.
That's Tuesday, we wouldn't do it on a Tuesday.
Yes, we wouldn't do it on, I'm sorry, yes. No for council day, so.
I think I'm okay.
The 23rd is a retirement party for somebody with the Hampton Roads Chamber.
Okay.
So you might want to,
Wednesday, the 22nd.
There you go.
Yeah.
We could do Wednesday at the convention center.
Yeah, Wednesday, 22nd.
we'll take a look at what's available, but as long as we've got the 20th, the 22nd, and we'll try to avoid the 24th. I don't want to do a Friday night.
Yeah, I won't.
Yeah. So we'll look at the 20th and 22nd for availability. I'll have contact the Convention Visitors Bureau.
Yes.
So, and that will be for public comment on an ordinance that we will send to you the week prior, which will be a week from now, a new draft of what was discussed as far as what's being referred to City Council. Okay? Go ahead, Mr. Inman, I'm sorry.
What's the rule on commissioners meeting with a councilman to talk, I mean, I'm talking about more than one commissioner, or, I mean, talking with a council person?
1 and 1.
Huh?
1 and 1.
I thought it was 2 and 2.
1 and 1?
Two council people,
So
two,
two commissioners can't have a meeting with a council person?
No, that's 3 people.
I don't remember, I thought
No,
it was
it's-
2 council people and 2 planning commissioners.
Because they're in different bodies. I thought they were different bodies.
Yeah,
Okay,
2 and
different
2.
bodies, you're fine. 2 and 2.
Doing,
Nobody, no
We
3
met
from
on
either
the-
one.
We met on the, that one,
Yeah, we did that.
yeah, we met, rehabilitation, animal rehabilitation.
Yes.
So yes.
3 commissioners can't go on any kind of business call to anybody.
Correct. It's required to be noticed 5 days as a public meeting if you're talking policy or business of the city. So,
If you're talking anything about, yeah, that's planning, it is.
Nothing like slowing up the progress of government. I know, but openness is important. Openness is.
Thank you, Mr.
it is. It is.
What if we put
Openness
it
is
on
very
YouTube
important.
After we have the meeting.
Yep.
No.
So we'll look at the 20th and the 22nd for the public comment period. We'll commit, Ms. Wilson, Kevin, and I will work on the ordinance changes, hopefully have it to you by next Wednesday. It's not much to change as far as our discussion. We do want to potentially schedule out additional discussions about these maps where we get a marker out and start drawing on it. Since we're already by the time we get to the public comment, it's potential that you could do that. If you don't want to meet again, if it's the will of the commission, we can meet at the August public hearing and do the same thing we just did today, where we just put the maps out and actually go and start marking on the map. If that's okay,
And
unless
perhaps-
you,
Is that gonna be a long
Perhaps we
agenda?
won't
Do you have any
televise
idea?
On the 12th? I'm sorry?
let me
Perhaps we
find,
won't televise it, the workshop after the August, and then we can spread out.
can we find the agenda for
August?
August real quick?
Is that posted?
That's a good
We're
question.
offline now, aren't we?
Are we? We're still live?
Yes,
Yes.
we're still on. Shucks, where is it? The tentative agenda is posted. I apologize, Commission, give me a moment. The agenda for
Okay, consolidated.
how many items? Oh, it's not there. So we have under 20 items for, at least as of right now, for the August meeting, so it's probably aligned similar to what we did today.
How
There,
many short-term rentals?
19.
there's potential for some, well, it depends, I'm sorry, I have to actually go into the folder and find
That's
it,
fine.
I'm
That's,
sorry.
you know,
I think there were
fine.
8 or 10.
Okay, that's fine.
I think it's about a 50-50 split.
I think it was 8 or 10, yeah.
You know, I told Robin and John since they started, we haven't left here before 5 o'clock yet. Not-
We're sorry.
We just wanted you to have some fun.
Oh, I'm gonna go back out one more, sorry, thank you.
There you go.
Let's go all the way down. 16. 16 items.
Okay, good.
So, and let's see, Short-term rentals, you have 7.
Seven.
So, nothing, I don't believe anything that's too, I mean, depending on some of the discussion, well, there may be some that have some pretty significant discussion if they stay on track for the agenda.
What is Birchwood Association?
So that's a multifamily development, I'm sorry, conditional use permit for a aged, what's it called? Senior housing, yes. Housing for seniors, so, sorry. So I think the agenda could be similar to this month's, and we can hammer out the maps and go through that. I would ask, please take a map and also, take time to take a look at what some of the characteristics that may be different. A lot of you are from a lot of these areas or have grown up in those areas, and so your knowledge of those specific areas and how they've operated for years is important. That's why you are on the commission. It's not just to facilitate the applications, but to bring your perspective of the city to our discussions.
Won't we have to vote on these 3 before it
August.
goes? Can that'll be advertised in August?
That will be advertised in
Okay,
August as well,
perfect.
yes.
Okay.
All right. We'll finalize the date for that, and we will plan for another workshop after the August hearing. Ms. Oliver, that's all I have.
We're done? You have to call it.
All right, I'm gonna close this workshop, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.